Hello, everyone, and good morning. In today's ABG Platform Power Hour, I'd like to introduce to you Vadim Grigoryan, author of Art Thinking, brand strategist, former rocket scientist, and creative director for leading luxury brands. Joining him is Maria Kolesnikova, commercial strategist in B2B, advisor unlocking value through meaning, creativity, and human judgment. Vadim will share the art thinking framework based on his recently published book by Culture Shock in London and what it means for marketing leaders navigating an AI saturated world with the help of art and culture. Vadim and Maria, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Katerina. And glad to see you, Maria, as well. So
Hello, everyone.
during this short presentation, I will share with you insights from my art thinking book, namely why cultural intelligence, cultural sensitivity, emotional intelligence become key in achieving brand leadership in our meaningless age of AI and what we can do about it. So I would like to start with this beautiful painting by Vasily Kandinsky. And in this painting that he was very proud about, the first in fact actually bought by Guggenheim Museum, the one that is soon opening also in Abu Dhabi. He said that in this painting there is lots of various forms, and they seem to be in chaos, but in reality they sit in some kind of harmony. And in fact, he even said that the circle, which is one of the primary forms on the slide, on this painting, is the synthesis of the greatest oppositions. And curiously enough, the same painting was used by somebody describing the organizational structure of a company. And the somebody was, a person that is quite important for one of the biggest organizations working with luxury brands, and namely LVMH. And this is Maud Alvarez Pereira, the group chief HR officer. And she said, competition inside LVMH behaves like it does in complex systems. It is not about conflict, it is about co-evolution. So she used this painting of Kandinsky to describe what is actually the key principle of this organization. And in fact, in my book, what I did is slightly taking things in the opposite direction, and namely looking at what actually art and artists can offer brands and businesses in order to achieve brand leadership. I would like to cite here one of the greatest artists of today, Olafur Eliasson, who said, as an artist, you become an entrepreneur by definition. Maybe one can take some of the tools, methodologies, and see if one can apply them to something outside the art world. And that is exactly what I did with art thinking. Just before going into some of the definitions that you can find in the book, I would like to share with you my vision of how actually one can build a high quality aspirational brand in today's context. And there are many frameworks that exist and have existed in marketing, in business, and 4Ps and 3Cs and whatever it is. Actually, my approach is super simple. It is based on building the two cults around the brand. First is the cult of product. So the product as the brand, as really at the forefront of the brand. Materials lead the process, and in fact, anything that is related to the product. And then the second is the cult of culture. The brand as a platform for ideas it is passionate about, brand brand experience as a total cultural experience, and of course brand as a cultural agent. And both of them, they come cemented with meaning, and you will hear this word several times in this presentation and in our conversation. And so what do I mean by a cultural agent? So a cultural agent is an aspirational brand on our organization, bringing something with a cause beyond transactional value that would not otherwise exist, and enriches our culture. Just as this beautiful Azulik um, resort in Tulum that actually built two museums in order to advance in its brand. And it has become one of the biggest accounts on Instagram, in fact, the biggest in the realm of hospitality. I really believe that aspirational brands must adopt art thinking and become cultural agents, or risk becoming expensive commodities. And that's what Bulgari understood. If you go to the Venice Biennale, which is actually open and will be open till the end of this November, you will see this beautiful pavilion that Bulgari built. And they really do understand the importance of culture. However, I have to say that simply doing limited editions or artist design products or even advertising campaigns by artists, it will not help you in becoming a cultural agent, even if you do this for a long time. However, brand-led art initiatives, from gallery spaces to art awards to artist podcasts, like in this example of Dior Talks by Jeffrey Gibson, a fantastic artist, which, by the way, was the backdrop for my book launch in Paris last year. So these types of activities, they actually bring you much closer to cultural agency. But I have to say, it only clicks, it only becomes really critical when art thinking reaches the heads of top managers. And that is one of the purposes of my book, to reach these people. I give you several examples. Lucia Prada, as much as I don't feel like a collector, I'm even less a patron. I am and want to be an active part of shaping culture. Hermès, Pierre-Alexis Dumas, the artistic director of the brand. Artists have a strong role in human society to remind us to feel and not to be machines. Through art, we experience feelings again. Or Audemars Piguet, a very interesting watch brand from Switzerland. Olivier Kwan, whom I interviewed for the book, she said the way artists are thinking and seeing the world differently can inspire us to think and work differently. So what is art thinking? In the book, I give a very simple definition. So this is engagement with the world of art and artists through three things: collaborations, patronship, and inspiration, and applying an artist's way of seeing the world and working to the fields of business and marketing. So art thinking is, in fact, thinking with artists, thinking across the artists, and thinking like artists. And artists have always been great thinkers. I would like to remind you of a very famous phrase of Leonardo da Vinci, who said, "La pittura è cosa mentale," which means the painting is a thing of a mind, which is, of course, now is, if you say, the motto of all conceptual contemporary artists of today. So in the book, you will discover that there are three levels of art thinking, and they correspond to these three fundamentals and oftentimes interlinked mechanisms of brands' art engagement. So the first is collaboration, second is patronage, and the third is inspiration. But the inspiration that I talk about is actually a different kind of inspiration. I called it non-aesthetic inspiration. It is for me the purest and the highest and the most powerful type of art engagement and art thinking. So this is using the lessons through exposure to an artist's thoughts and philosophies and principles and ways of working and things like this, and applying them to the realms of business. In the book, I distill insights from 9 artists, from Marcel Duchamp to Theaster Gates, and you will see that these lessons are absolutely precious. And in fact, I really believe that any good marketer, entrepreneur, business leader should actually know these artists at least. So please make a note of them, and you could start studying them. So, what kind of things we can learn for brands and businesses? Many things. I give you just very quickly an example from Marcel Duchamp. View a client as a counterpart, not a slave or a king. Leave space for interpretation. What does it mean for business? Embrace chance as part of the creative process, etc., etc. And in fact, I have already applied many of these things to a brand that I launched several years ago. It's called it's written X Muse, but it's called 10th Muse. It's a brand of vodka from Scotland, high-end vodka, where every single element and the ethos of the brand are inspired by art, aesthetically and non-aesthetically. So why should brands and companies pursue art thinking and become cultural agents? In the book, I give 5 reasons: vision, time transcendence, influence, emotions, and meaning. But here, for the sake of time, I will focus just only briefly on the last 2, emotions and meaning. One of the greatest artists of the 20th century, Joseph Beuys, in fact, born on the same day as I am, he said that even a dead animal preserves more powers of intuition than some human beings with their stubborn rationality. And yet we're living in an era of emotions and emojis, and where, you know, our global lives unfold on social media and nations compete in global pursuit of happiness. And many years ago, my fellow city man, Gary Kasparov, in Baku, because I'm born in Baku as well, and he lost in 1997 to a supercomputer of IBM called Deep Blue, and I thought, as many other people, that this is it. And in fact, this computer is, you know, or was much more stupid than any iPhone that we have in our hands. And so, what is left? The answer was created, in fact, the same year by Jacques Derrida, very famous. Very famous French philosopher, and he said in his essay "L'animal donc je suis," and that means the animal, and therefore I am. So we need to accept our animality. We need to accept our emotions, and hence emotional intelligence become very important. And of course, artists are unrivaled in expressing emotions. And so art thinking turns human emotional complexity in strategic power for brands and makes cultural intelligence the less defensible advantage. And as far as meaning is concerned, I really like this quote by a fantastic biologist and Nobel Prize winner, Francois Jacob, and he said, "What man seeks to the point of anguish in his gods, in his art, in his science is meaning. He pours meaning on events like salt on his food." And in fact, the urgency is real. The recent study by Harvard University shows that almost 60% of young people actually find that they lack meaning or purpose in their lives. And this is no matter race, gender, income, etc., etc. So this is a really, really big problem that the brands need to address. And in fact, in the book, I explain how this becomes a problem for the brands. Because if we look at things in a very simple way, we know we need meaning, as Francois Jacob said, but we lack meaning in our life. We know that. So what we do, we find surrogate as a meaning substitute, but we also know that it brings nowhere. We you oftentimes you do not find meaning if you buy another pair of shoes or another bag, right? So we, just as the brands, we need art as a genuine meaning search tool and this antidote to consumerism. So if the brands do not understand that, they are literally sowing the branch on which they seed. And the current state of luxury market, in fact, reveals the weak signals, as the French say, the weak signals of the fatigue of meaninglessness associated with it. And the recent Met Gala, uh, you know, dress code, which was fashion is art, really exposes the industry's necessity and urge to transcend itself and its struggle with meaning. And I really believe that in our meaningless age, the ability to generate meaning becomes really defining force of a brand leadership. And I think we all, you and many other people that work with brands, we have a real responsibility today, real responsibility, but also it's a real opportunity, and we need to embrace it. So I really believe that business leaders cannot afford to be cultural orphans, and leadership must be driven by things like awareness, purpose, empathy, curiosity, and sensitivity, and all these things that actually matter for artists. And art thinking restores meaning and reconnects us to the human core, and ensures that we remain masters of AI and not its slaves. And finally, I would like to quote again Kandinsky, who in 1911 said that that which belongs to the spirit of the future can only be realized in feeling. And to this feeling, the talent of the artist is the only road. So if you would like to achieve brand leadership, please embrace art thinking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vadim. I really liked how you put cultural agency as a strategic asset. And let's move to the questions to unpack it further. I will start with what I'm personally curious about. And everyone, feel free to put your questions into the comment section online. Vadim, in your view, which industries stand to gain the most from building real cultural agency?
I think it's an interesting question because, and my answer will be quite surprising, because I really believe that this is the answer to all industries. And of course, we see that luxury brands are more engaged with art, etc. But they're engaged oftentimes for the wrong reasons. I think that the core principle that I described, um, the this non-aesthetic inspiration, is actually accessible, and is necessary to apply to all kinds of businesses, including even B2B businesses. And because let's not forget that even the buyers for technological services and equipment and whatever it is, they're actually people, and with their emotions, with their kind of emotional decision making, etc., etc. So no matter which business we work, the art thinking can give its power to the entrepreneurs and business leaders.
Yeah, so it's basically really wide and universal. And if they think about geographies, because art and culture always have this geographical dimension. And is there anything specific about the UAE or the urgency for the companies here in the region when it comes to art thinking?
I actually think, and the reason why we do this conversation today is that there is almost a stronger potential, I believe, in the region, because it is no secret that the leadership of UAE recognize the importance of culture for building and positioning the whole, the cities, but also the cities like Abu Dhabi, but also the country on the whole as a cultural agent. And I think there is a gap between this very kind of top level vision of the country leadership and the leadership of brands. And I think that this type of conversation is bridging this gap, and in fact bringing the companies hopefully to the level of the vision of the country leadership. So I think that it's almost easier in the region, because at the top level the importance of culture is absolutely recognized, and increasingly there are opportunities to engage with various institutions that are either already existing and plan to exist. We all know about Guggenheim coming to the stage, but also other museums, the Duma Museum in Dubai, which was announced last year, which is an incredible project, actually led by one of the leading companies in the region. So yeah, I would say that it's the context is very very helping for adapting art thinking mentality at a more granular level within the companies in the region.
Yeah, what is definitely a good news. And as you mentioned in your presentation, that this engagement and support from the top leaders is essential into implementing and making happen art thinking.
Absolutely.
In my experience working with commercial teams, I've seen how the impact of cultural agency on value creation is often underestimated. And this is mostly because it's intangible and hard to measure. Can you give us some practical tips on how to reflect the value created by cultural agency actually in the value of the product of the brand?
I think that it's obviously a question, a very complex question, because in general, how do we evaluate any business activity, etc. And of course that the impact of art thinking is could be seen on both short-term, mid-term, and long-term basis, and that's why these levels of our thinking that I talked in the book: collaboration, patronship, and non-aesthetic inspiration. They all provide the value at different levels. So collaboration is much short-term impact, patronship more longer term, just as the non-aesthetic inspiration. So as far as the product is concerned, I think that in my experience, when I was leading big marketing teams in Pernod Ricard, I saw how within, I would say, 2 years of active exposure of marketing teams to art, conversations with artists, etc., how the general level of their creativity, the general level of their, let's say, innovation that they brought at various, tasks, marketing tasks, it was just incomparable. And so I would say that, and then of course you measure that, because your brand becomes much more innovative, brings more innovative things, etc. So I think that you treat it, you can treat it as any business philosophy, to see how it works on on the impact of the business, from sales to brand perception, and all of that. But I think this is more than that. I think that we need to understand that you cannot just measure value pure, let's say, in pure business terms, etc. So it's as a comprehensive philosophy, it is very complex, and it impacts on various levels of organization. So it is difficult to isolate some of the things, etc. And that's the complexity, of course, of our thinking.
It is, and in the same time, what I like to say, that the fact that it is not that easy to measure, it does not mean it does not exist, and it does not mean it does not bring that huge value for the company and for the customers, because we all know it does.
Absolutely.
And what does it look like when a brand implements art thinking and gets it wrong? Probably you've seen examples like that. What are the pitfalls you would recommend to avoid?
Well, I think that sometimes we see that, I was, for example, I was leading all the cultural activities of Absolute, and it started in 1985. And at that time, just being with contemporary art was differentiating enough. And today, of course, scores of brands understand the value of art. Scores of brands, collaborate with artists. Oftentimes, as I mentioned in the presentation, it's at the lower level of engagement. But people, of course, there are great exceptions to that, but oftentimes people think it's, they use, for example, artists as a substitute to marketing agencies, for example, which is not. Or they demand, or they try to apply the same metrics as they apply to marketing agencies, etc. So they actually, instead of benefiting from an immense power of art, and I mentioned some of that, embrace chance as part of creative process. This is one of the key principles of artistic creation, right? But allowing this in the organization, it's totally reversing things, because we in businesses we would like to impose strict processes, strict control things, etc., etc. And yet we all know the great examples of the companies that uh, achieve great results, actually, by allowing a certain level of freedom and certain level of so this is just one of the examples. But I think globally it is the big mistake is not allowing time for learning about artists that you work with, about art, spending time on education, exposing the teams constantly to art and artists, and trying to find some shortcuts. And I think if you believe in the power of art thinking, if you allow the right time, if you create this space for education and the space for advancement, etc., etc., then things fall uh, naturally in the right buckets, and things work. And if you don't, if you try to make shortcuts, if you do not understand and you go with trying to think that artists are your advertising agency, that it is wrong. It is wrong, and that's why it's not beneficial. Then the artists are not happy, then they do not give the best what they can for the companies, so it becomes a nightmare. In the book, in fact, together with the artist Marcus Lachens, we call this situation corporate purgatory. So that's what often happens. So to answer in short your question, I think it's not allowing corporate purgatory to happen.
Yeah, I like the definition. And to continue on that, in your view, what separates brands that are genuinely building cultural agency from those which are just borrowing it, just associating themselves with a cultural agency?
I think it is several elements. It's first, it's, I would say, doing things with consciousness, trying to learn things, trying to genuinely engage with artists. That's one element, and by genuinely engaging, there is the whole passage in the book what it means, blah blah blah. But fundamentally, it is really doing your job, to learn, to study particular artists or particular type of art, etc. So preparing yourself for that, and then coming to them with a respect, and the idea of mutual respect is very, very important. That when you work with artists, you need to respect them. You need to understand their specificities, etc., etc. The second, I think, apart from mutual respect, this is also very important. It's long-term approach, because oftentimes it's like, oh, let's do a little thing here, little thing there, never works. So especially for patronship, all these programs, and in the book I covered many of them, from building artist spaces to artist residencies, to specific brand art initiatives, art awards, whatever it is. You need to do them longer term. really need to engage with art and artists on long term, and uh, that is a big mistake when the brands treat things short term. So that's, in my experience, is probably the two biggest things I would like to say: the lacking respect and short term vision.
I really like that, and especially this long-term point of view, because this is exactly what separates businesses which are sustainable and which are succeeding from those which are not.
Absolutely.
Uh, Vadim, and let's take example of a brand that does not interact with the culture at all right now. Where would you recommend they start?
Uh, well, of course, getting the book and reading it. I think that's a great start. And I wrote the book actually from the point of view of an intelligent person, educated person, but the person that probably that never studied art, or has little understanding of how the art world works, etc. Um, so that's one thing. But then I always recommend people, you can also read, let's say, cultural supplement of Financial Times. That's also a great start, and you will see that it's a business paper, right? But the the way they cover art is very accessible, yet not debilitating. It's not art for dummies or something like this. By the way, the book is not neither. And uh, um, and you will see that within a year, anybody could become much more advanced in understanding the role of art, etc., etc. Because art and culture in general, it's a kind of language, and it's the language that you need to learn to speak, and this requires a bit of patience, a bit of learning, a bit of education, etc., etc. So I think, and that's what I did with my teams in the past, and the results are incredible, and people are grateful for that. So you see the results in business, you see your teams becoming more creative, uh, more interested in what they do, etc., etc. And in fact, in the book, I also I give some incredible examples. There is a company in Korea that is producing, I think, toilets and things like this, and where the owner and the CEO of the company started exposing them to art and all of that. It's changing the way the company is functioning, changing the way they work, increasing the engagement, etc. And in fact, there are so many statistics showing this. So just start exposing your teams to contemporary art. That's my advice. Make them read things, bring them to exhibitions, invite you know uh, cultural brand strategists to organize seminars with them, etc. Buy the book, whatever. Some of these things would be very helpful, or all of them together.
That's inspiring and very promising. Um, it's time to start wrapping up. Thank you very much, Vadim, for sharing your insights and maybe even more important, that inspiration about art and art thinking. Thank you, Katerina and ABG, for inviting us. And looking forward to discuss that topic further. Feel free to reach out, Vadim or myself.
Yes, with great pleasure. Let's connect on LinkedIn or whatever, and hope to see you soon in person. Normally, I will be coming to the region by the end of this year, so I'm sure we can find a way to stay together and stay connected. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.